He had to do coke in front of a bunch of dudes during a bar one night. Former undercover cops, what is the craziest thing you had to do to not blow your cover? My cousin was an undercover ATF agent. ATF means Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms. They were trying to bust some guys for illegal alcohol distribution and were building a rapport by going undercover. My cousin doesn't take his ATF badge with him when he's undercover because if anyone ever saw it, he could get shot. Anyway, some hot-headed black and white cops came over and started harassing them. My cousin couldn't blow his cover, but pretty soon the police started getting physical and they beat the crap out of my cousin and the guys he is trying to get evidence from. They take them all into the police station only to find out that my cousin is ATF. My cousin was angry because cops aren't supposed to beat people up. He is currently filing a lawsuit against that police department. When I first got started in forensics it was when chat rooms and webcams were taking off, so pedophiles thought they'd be able to figure out who was who on the internet since clearly you'll know you're webcamming with a 40-year-old dude munching on donuts instead of a 14-year-old girl. I was a naive 18-year-old woman who was just getting started in policing, doing some clerical work for my hometown police department when I heard a couple people talking about how they were having a hard time chatting up creeps now that webcams were a thing. I told them why not just hire someone to act like an underage girl or boy and coach them on what to say and how to set up meetings to catch these a-holes. Lo and behold, I volunteered myself for the job. We set up a bedroom in one of the upstairs offices complete with a bed, a desk, and some posters from one of the officer's teenage daughters. I had to wear some of my high school sports clothes or pajamas while talking to predators via webcam. I passed notes back and forth with a team of officers and passed it off as trying to do homework while chatting. The hardest part was to still seem interested and innocent while this dude on the screen is telling me what type of horrible things he wants to do to my body thinking I'm still a child. We netted somewhere around 120 men and a handful of women. The most notable was a few clergy, 2 city councilmen, a state trooper, school teachers, and other people you would just trust around kids. All of them looked like regular people and seemed like people I would interact with every day, without any idea that they were soliciting sex from minors online. As a former correctional officer, we had a situation where a major police department planted a cop in the prison to get information on a guy they believed was orchestrating hits from inside the prison. The warden knew and I knew, by accident, but not a single other CO knew, nor did any of the staff, including medical, and that's the way they wanted it. He went through receiving, he was categorized and placed. It was wild. He was there for a week, got the info they needed and got him out. It didn't become public knowledge that he was undercover until after I had left, and it was a long while after as they were making a case. That was a surreal moment. I know a guy who often went undercover as a junkie. He was committed. He'd stop showering for a while before a gig and piss on his tracksuit before going into work. He was so good that he managed to get the same dealer convicted twice in the space of a year and they never suspected he was the rat. He had multiple police records under different names too. One time a Homeland Security officer came up to my house undercover, flashed his badge and asked if he could come in. Once he was in, he pulled out a piece of paper with my neighbor's face on it. He asked if I had seen him around lately. When I asked what he did, and let him know I haven't seen him around, he told me what he was wanted for. Rope, child abuse, drugs, the whole lot. Turns out he roped his stepdaughter, and once he found out he was wanted, he went back to El Salvador. I thought they only flashed their badges in the movies, but turns out, the stuff is real. Not a cop but a guy my mom dated for a long time was. Older guy, in his 70s now, he was fresh out of the academy and at the Asbury Park riots. Sad scary stuff. And then was an undercover narcotics cop for 14 years during the 70s and 80s with the NJSP. He was Puerto Rican, and spoke Spanish, was an ex-Marine, and became a state trooper. They utilized his ability to blend in with organized crime in the Latin community. He had to do coke in front of a bunch of dudes during a bar one night, and basically stuck his knife in and blew a mound up his nose. Then he started having a minor paranoia and panic attack that they were going to find out he was a cop, thanks to the gram of blow he just took to the dome. He was breathing heavy and went out for air, his heart was pounding out of his chest, panicking over how to get out of it. One of the gangsters came outside to talk to him. He's ready to run or fight, guy goes. Man, I've never seen someone snort that much at once, man. You okay? He sighs a huge sigh of relief, and was like, yeah, I never did that much. I'm having trouble breathing, hey. The guy was really nice, brings him a drink and they smoked a cig. Everyone is joking that he has the heart of a lion to take that much. He actually felt bad about locking that one guy up when it all went down. Think he said he tried to help him or get a reduced sentence or something. My dad did undercover for several years and talked about a meth head that he hung out with all the time and even babysat her kids when she went out to get high. This went on for several months while they were figuring out who the big dealer was and acquiring warrants. He grew a beard, had a fake ID, drove an old car. Eventually they got warrants to bust a bunch of people in the drug ring, and he actually was part of the SWAT team at the time and was part of the group that smashed in doors and arrested her and a bunch of others in the area. He had to wear a balaclava to protect his identity when with the SWAT team. He said it was actually really difficult because he had become an important part of those kids' lives and was kind of attached to them, and now they had no mother and had to be taken to Child Protective Services. I never got to ask him more questions about this before he passed, but I have no idea how he balanced this crazy second life and then came home and acted like a normal husband and father in our family. Not a cop, but fell prey to an undercover operation. I feel obligated to preface this with how amazed I am at how integrated this man was in our gang. If giving an Oscar-worthy performance is the standard, I have to say, I'm pretty impressed by what you guys can do. Over the course of several months, this cop earned our trust. Hell, at one point, I would have said that I trusted that man more than my own brother, who was also in the gang. To be fair, I caught my brother stealing products from us more than once, but I trusted him to not directly destroy my livelihood. Suffice to say, this cop's acting skill was one of the #1 factors that led to us getting busted. This man, let's call him Dave, was absolutely fearless and tough as nails. One of our initiation rituals involved letting members of the group wail on you for 3 minutes, no holding back. If you were still breathing afterwards, you were in. After getting pummeled to the ground by 7 or 8 different men, Dave wasn't just alive. It was almost as if he enjoyed it. He was probably smiling because he got his foot in the door, now that I think about it. To get to the craziest thing Dave did, I need to explain how our gang functioned. We start off being refereed to as a number, both to protect identity and as a form of putting lower-ranked members in their place. Names had to be earned. We didn't exactly have a set criteria for earning a name, but members often had to bring in enough income for the gang, earn the leader's trust, and commit various violent acts for the benefit of the group before a name was even considered. All names follow the same theme. Astronomy. Our leader was known as Vega. The day Dave earned his name, Vega had him as a getaway driver for a group of members. Their job was to sneak into a rival dealer's house, steal his product, and escape in Dave's car. As they were making their getaway, someone opened fire on the vehicle and Dave took a round to the forearm. Without even slowing down, he managed to get our guys back to the house using one arm to drive. After his arrival, Vega and I rushed him to the ER as he sat there, holding a jacket against the wound, trying to control his breaths. Within the next day, he made a full recovery. Once Dave got back, everyone showered him with gratitude and praised his coolness. Vega approached him with a name tag in his hand and pinned it to Dave's shirt, signifying that he earned his right to be known as something more than a number, Sirius. I don't hold any grudges against him for putting us behind bars. That man saved my life. Wherever you are, man, thank you. You changed who I was for the better. I will never forget the time that you earned your Sirius tag. I must have been 15 when one day the doorbell rang and I opened the door to 2 guys looking very much like real tough street guys. They showed me their badges and asked for my mom or dad. Turned out that they wanted to stake out a public playground behind our garden that was used by some drug dealers for their mules, people drinking large amounts of water and puking up little packages with some substance in it. There was a multi-story bank near the playground, but the bank didn't want anything to do with it. So they asked my parents whether they could set up a surveillance team on our terrace for a couple of days. My parents allowed it. And my mom prepared food for the guys all week long. Not a cop, but in college I took a few criminal justice classes. Our professor, who I will call Bob, was a cop for 15 or so years and had gone undercover in the 80s for a very long time. Bob was biker as a hobby and he was sent undercover to break up a meth ring in the biker community. Bob arranged to buy some meth from some guy, and shortly after the buy the dealer was arrested. The dealer's sister started telling everyone she thought Bob was a cop, and some of the other bikers started asking him questions. So a day or so after the sister started accusing Bob of being an narc, the entire group was at a bar. Bob told a few of the guys to meet him outside in a few minutes, and Bob told the sister he had some meth for her and to come outside. When they finally got out there, Bob told her, Where I'm from, friends don't call friends narcs. He then beat the hell out of her in front of the entire group. He kicked her as hard as he could between her legs, which, while not as painful if you're a woman, still hurts. Then he said he punched her 4 or 5 times in the face. Hard. He said he didn't want to do it, but after he did that no one ever accused him of being a cop again. Undercover cop in my hometown committed suicide, shot himself, in his truck after leaving the gym. He was in pretty deep with some high-profile drug dealers and dangerous people. I attended this gym and got the details from my personal trainer. The story is he was working out with one of the kingpin drug dudes, and a girl he used to date approached him saying she wished he was in uniform because he was cuter or something along the lines of that. She had no idea he was undercover. I guess he called his wife in the bathroom at the gym and said he was sorry and that he was a dead man, and then he shot himself. Sad. I once was the gardener for a cop who worked undercover in the sex trade to identify pimps, traffickers and extract underage kids. She retired early due to mental health issues likely stemming from drug use during her time undercover. To keep cover, she would do the drugs that were being offered. Of course, things spiraled out of control for her and suddenly she's on permanent paid leave and she stays in the house most days hiding from the world. So for her, what she did to keep cover is offer up her sanity in exchange for some successful arrests. Not an officer, but was on the wrong end of an undercover operation. In college I developed a liking for opioids and it quickly spiraled out of control. I couldn't afford my habit, so I started selling to afford using. I sold very small amounts and only to my friends. It was a horrible thing to do, but addiction makes you do crazy things and not think clearly. A kid I regularly sold to, I'll call him Larry, came over my house one night with his best friend from high school. The kid looked about our age, young 20s at the time, and I considered Larry to be a very good friend of mine. I had known him all 4 years we had been at college and hung out fairly regularly. He asked if his friend could have my number as he was moving to our area for work and needed a connect. I said sure, and that was that. I never sold on campus, and for some reason this kid only wanted to meet me in the parking lot on campus. I kept telling him no until finally one time I hit a dry patch and needed all the help I could get. I agreed to meet him in the school parking lot. I gave him 2 pills for $60 and turned to get out of his truck. I felt a hand on my forearm and turned to see another guy with one hand on me and a gun in the other pointed directly at me. Figured I was getting robbed. Turned out it was the police and my friend had set me, and others, up in an effort to get his sentence reduced. The system is so messed up that their one goal is to arrest college kids on campus and dangle large sentences with mandatory minimums on them so they are forced to become a C and avoid the hefty sentences attached to the mandatory minimums. They are you, and you're supposed to keep in constant contact with the undercover officer and supply him with names and targets they can arrest. The issue is you're not under any supervision and you're not expected to rehabilitate yourself. Larry ended up continuing to use despite being a C. The cops don't drug test nor help with the necessary rehab, they just want to make more and more arrests. It's a bullshit system that takes advantage of young vulnerable addicts. Larry lived alone and was required to keep all of his dealings private so that the officer's cover wasn't blown and Larry's status as a C wasn't jeopardized. He went silent for a few days and no one was sure why. His best friend decided to see what was up and went to his apartment. Larry had OD'd alone in his apartment about 36 to 48 hours before his best friend found him. I didn't end up helping the cops and instead went into rehab, then jail, released on parole and concurrent probation. I was facing a mandatory minimum of 4 years and the judge said I should thank him for his lenience as I could have gone to jail for up to 30 years. Fortunately, I'm still alive. I know a lot of people who lost the fight with addiction. It wasn't me, but my grandfather. Guy worked narcotics, had to get in with some guys who dealt meth and was pretending to be a user himself. I believe he actually had to shoot up once or twice. One day one of the higher-ups was starting to get suspicious, didn't believe my grandpa was actually a user or anything because he didn't have any marks on his arm, where they normally do. And my grandpa told them that he doesn't shoot there, but near his pelvis, said he was more than happy to pull down his pants and undies to show him. Dude didn't want CNED and my grandpa got away with it. He lives in a whole ass other state now for safety reasons because a lot of the guys he put away years ago are now getting out. Subscribe button and activate the notification bell for more videos. Click the right box for the cops playlist. Let us know in the comments what you think about these stories. And be nice to your police officer, except when you're from a corrupt country.